the day had a hateful way of breaking over the dustlands. It wasn't sunlight, not truly, just thin phosphorescent grit boiling off the horizon, fracturing the air like broken ancient glass. The wreckage of the old world below shimmered, half-buried signs whispering promises of water and clean energy. But Kai had stopped believing in easy things a long time ago. He hunkered beneath the rusted hull of an overturned mining vehicle, squinting at a sign hammered into the scorched earth. The vein in faded, peeling blood-red letters. The air tasted faintly of burnt sulfur and hot iron, a metallic scent that mixed with the dry sweat of fear. Far off, the skeletal remains of a cargo crawler groaned, its chassis shifting in the rising heat. He adjusted the tattered bandana covering his mouth and checked the message etched into the crude bone stylus he carried. One trade. One dawn. You get to live. No clan mark, no signature, just the coordinates and the brutal time limit. He thought it was a trap. The Dustlands were full of desperate gangs and stranger myths. But the promise of a trade, a piece of the lost tech he needed, had dragged him here, a desperate hook snagging his greed. Inside, the vein was not a lounge. It was a dry, excavated tomb carved deep into the canyon rock. Dust filtered through cracks in the ceiling, catching the light from ancient, repurposed bioluminescent fungi. A low, steady drumbeat played, half warning, half death march. The patrons were too still, too skeletal, their movements slow and unervingly economical. When one of them moved, their eyes reflected the fungal light like polished obsidian. And when they spoke, their voices were all static and dry whispers. Kai tossed a sack of pre-war synth food onto the makeshift bar, trying not to look too long at the parched figures around him. The bartender, a man with skin like dried clay, didn't ask for payment, just smiled with teeth that were too long and slid a glass over. It was filled with a thick, opaque fluid that didn't shimmer, but absorbed the light, looking like concentrated shadow. That's when he felt it, a pressure heavy and patient sinking into his spine. She wasn't leaning, she was seated on a throne of smooth, dark volcanic rock. Her clothes were simple, layered linen, the color of burnt umber, but her skin seemed to catch the light and turn it into shadow. She didn't have liquid hair, it was braided tight with silver wire and dusted with desert earth. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes held a challenge, one that promised survival or annihilation. He didn't need to ask her name. Every legend whispered it before she even lifted her head. Kai, she said, her voice a dry rustle of sand. You brought the tribute. He kept his hand near the knife at his waist. The message said, trade. I want the fusion cell. She tilted her head, her lips barely parting. And you answered the call. Most scavengers sense what I am and turn to dust before they reach this level. You didn't? Kai's throat tightened. So what are you? Her smile was thin, a crack in the dried earth. Asha, she said simply. Daughter of the first sun keeper of the deep water. Before he could process this, she rose, her motion like a coil unspringing. Walk the path with me, she commanded. The gaunt patrons cleared the way in silent deference. Kai followed, his fear now an urgent, hot thing in his blood. She led him through narrow tunnels lined with the preserved, shrunken heads of long-dead travelers. The drumming faded, replaced by the sound of sand trickling, endless and deep. She stopped in a cramped, dark pit. In the center was a single stone altar and a basin of water that looked too clean, too cool to be real. Kneel, she said. He hesitated, then obeyed. She dipped her hand into the basin, her movements economical and ancient. What is this? He whispered. Life, she said. He raised an eyebrow. Tastes like death where I come from. It's not for drinking. She studied him with that terrifying stillness. Do you believe in monsters of the light, Kai? He chuckled, the sound grating. I live in the Dustlands. I've seen men sell their children for a gallon of fuel and priests worship broken satellites. Yeah, I believe in monsters. Her expression remained unchanged. Good. Then this won't be difficult. Before he could react, she moved, her fingers catching his chin. The touch wasn't cold, it was scalding. His muscles seized and then he felt it, a surge of something scorched, bright, and impossibly ancient rushing through his arteries. Images flashed behind his eyes, cities turning to glass, a woman laughing under a sun that did not burn her, a desert stretching forever in silence. He cried out, pulling back violently. What did you do? A tribute, she whispered, wiping a bead of his sweat on her finger. What? Now you carry the scent of my thirst. Kai's breathing came in ragged gasps. Why me? He managed. Because you only believe in need. The air grew thin, heavy with the weight of her words. She leaned closer. Do you know what happens when a daughter of the sun marks a human in the deep dark? A bond, I'm guessing, he said, his voice flat. Her lips curved, but the desert didn't soften. No, it's a vessel. A thread that holds the hunger. He felt it then, a sudden, agonizing thirst that superseded all thought. his vision blurred, the pit walls seemed to crumble. When it cleared, the shadows around them writhed. In one shadow he saw himself dissolving into sand while she fed. In another he saw himself, years later, guiding her across the dunes under the scorching sun. "What have you turned me into?" he demanded. She stepped back, her voice barely a scrape. "I took a vessel I swore never to take again." The air vibrated with a terrifying truth: survival at any cost. Finally she turned toward a crack in the canyon wall. "Go back to the Dustlands, Kai. Forget this pit." "Not possible," he rasped, his throat raw. Her eyes, now glowing faintly gold, held a strange pity. "Then you will learn what it means to crave something that cannot be quenched." Before he could reply, the dust in the air thickened. A shape appeared, something vast, made of pure, oppressive heat, watching from the cracks above. Asha stiffened. "The Watchers noticed the exchange," she said quietly. "Oh, the ones who guard the Dry Covenant. Go." But Kai didn't move. The thirst was too real. "You said I'm a vessel. What happens if I stay?" Her eyes locked on his, fierce and aching. "Then your needs will never look the same again." She stepped closer, her breath hot and dry against his skin. "And neither will mine." Then she didn't vanish but retreated, slipping into the nearest crevice, becoming one with the dark earth, leaving only the scent of scorched salt and the echo of a bargain that had already begun to claim him. Kai stood there, the immense thirst shaking his body. Outside, the Dustlands continued to bake like nothing had changed. But deep within him, something that demanded water and heat with every beat of his heart. Not scavenger. Not yet serpent. Something in between. And for the first time in his life, Kai wasn't afraid of the dark. He was afraid of the rising sun. The acid smog still clung to the rooftops of Berlina's divided sector as Elias Vance stood outside the grimy observation post, feeling the faint chill of paranoia coil inside him like frayed copper wire. Vesper's contact number still glowed on his encrypted pager. A single sequence of static-laced digits she'd whispered into his ear during that tense alley meeting. He hadn't seen her since. But she'd promised she'd contact him again when the directorate switched to Code Red. Tonight, Berlina was on Code Red. Every street lamp flickered with the harsh yellow light of emergency generators. Above, the concrete apartment blocks loomed like brutalist cages, their narrow windows guarded by razor wire. The skyline was a monument to fear, pulsing with the muffled sounds of the state's propaganda radio. Elias watched a black state sedan drift past, reflected in the oily puddle at his feet, and he whispered, "She's here." A voice behind him answered, sharp as breaking glass. He remembered the signal. He spun, and there she was. Vesper. Wrapped in a thin, worn trench coat, her hair a dull black in the poor light, eyes shimmering like twin radio filters. Her smile was both a warning and a relief. "You actually risked it," he said, the words tight. "Risk is relative," she replied. "Your superiors forget, I don't." They walked side by side under the damp, cold fog. The city hummed with the slow, grinding noise of Soviet-era machinery and the constant static of hidden microphones. Elias tried to speak, but the tension was a physical pressure in his chest. She seemed detached, yet her presence felt like a loaded weapon aimed at his head. Finally she said, "Do you still think you can handle an asset debriefing?" He swallowed. "After what happened with the injection last time, I think I have to try." Her laugh was a dry, hollow sound. The right answer. They slipped into a dilapidated substation called the Pulse. Inside, the single bare light bulb pulsed in sync with the nearby transformer's hum. The few patrons were all silence and shadow, half informant, half victim. Nobody asked questions here. Vesper ordered bitter black, a potent local coffee, rumored to be mixed with illegal stimulants. Elias ordered a watered-down tea he couldn't enjoy. His reflection was distorted across the dusty mirror behind the counter. "So," she said, tilting her head. "Still think I'm just a directorate fabrication?" "You're more real than half the lies they feed us," he murmured. Her eyes softened. For a flicker of a second, the look of the escapee gave way to the look of the experiment. "You have no idea the classification level that thought belongs to," she said. "The moment you believe in the failure of Protocol Omega, the state starts assigning you a decommission tag." "What protocol?" "The Contagion Protocol," she said, her voice lowering. "It manages the spread of the link. You touched me, you've already broken one clause. You came back, that's another. The directorate won't issue a third warning." He stared at her, the words like ice in his veins. "You mean they'll try to sanitize me?" Her silence was the answer. Outside, a distant siren wailed, a sound not of warning but of acquisition. The streetlights turned a frantic, harsh white, and through the substation's window, Elias saw the reflection of drone searchlights sweeping the rooftops. Snatch teams. Or worse. Vesper grabbed his hand, her touch was cold, clinical. "We need to go off-grid. Now." They sprinted through a back alley into a narrow concrete tunnel streaked with oily runoff. Her speed wasn't supernatural, it was the practiced speed of a highly trained military escapee. Elias followed, lungs burning, the cold adrenaline of a man facing the firing squad screaming through his veins. The tunnel opened onto a maintenance hatch, rusted iron, covered in graffiti and old warning labels. She punched a code into a hidden panel, and the metal door slid open with a metallic groan. Beyond it was a narrow ladder descending into the deep bunkers beneath the city. "Where does this go?" he asked. "To where I was created," she whispered. "And where you'll finally understand the data breach you've stepped into." They descended together. The sounds of the city faded until only the echo of dripping water remained. The bunker opened into a vast underground laboratory lit by emergency red lights that pulsed gently like overworked machinery. Cryotanks of scarred glass stood in shallow, discolored water, each one holding a dormant, pale figure. "These are the subjects," she said. "We don't rest in sleep anymore. We rest in stasis. The tank is a link between biobody and state archive." He touched one. The figure inside twitched, its face flashing with expressions of pain and terror. "They dream? They relive their conditioning," she said. "And the directorate harvests those stress metrics when they wake." Something inside him stirred, a deep, professional revulsion. The assets weren't just escapees. They were bioweapons trapped between the hunger for stability and the memory of freedom. Vesper stopped before a tank larger than the rest. Its surface reflected the entire chamber with sterile precision. "This one's archive link is mine," she said. "You were kept here?" "I was," she whispered, turning toward him. "Until I hijacked my own exit protocol." Elias felt his pulse hammering in his ears. "And now I am Protocol Zero, awake and uncontrolled." The words hung between them, heavy as a debriefing report. Before he could answer, the lights flickered violently. The air filled with a high-pitched electronic shriek, the sound of directorate countermeasures flooding the tunnels. The snatch teams had followed them down. "Move," she hissed. But he didn't. Instead, Elias stepped in front of her, shielding her from the burst of high-intensity sonic fire that tore through the tunnel entrance. His skin vibrated, his ears screamed, but he didn't move. "Why would an analyst do that?" she shouted, her voice laced with static. "Because," he said through gritted teeth, "I thought I was here to gather intelligence. But I didn't know I'd develop a loyalty conflict." Her eyes widened, the dark filters flaring with something deeper than shock. "Naive civilian," she whispered, and pulled him into her arms. Then the world vanished into a blur of red light and acoustic feedback. The blast of sonic fire still echoed in Elias's head when consciousness returned. His eyelids fluttered open to a dim light, not natural light but the soft, clinical glow of medical readout screens. He lay on a cold steel table, surrounded by walls that shimmered with data cables and veins of black wire. Somewhere nearby, a rhythmic beeping played, slow, steady, a life support system mixed with a digital counter. A cool hand pressed against his chest. "Don't move," Vesper said softly. "Your acoustic trauma is severe." He turned his head toward her voice. She sat beside him, her coat gone, revealing the thin, pale skin of her shoulders, marked by faint, glowing numerical tattoos that seemed alive. Her expression was unreadable, half relief, half professional guilt. "What happened?" he whispered. "The directorate found us. You took a hit from a sonic disruptor." Her eyes darkened. "It should have shattered your organs." "But it didn't." Elias blinked. "What?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Protocol Omega is changing." Outside, faint thuds echoed, the sound of the upper city in chaos. State drones swept across the skyline, and the gray horizon burned with the searchlights of 1,000 border patrols. Elias looked around the chamber again. "Where are we?" "A hidden subnet node," Vesper said. "Deep beneath the old East Sector. This is where the original protocol architects kept their backup data." "Architects?" She nodded slowly. "Before the war, before the state thought they built this city, we built it. The first assets were scientists, strategists. We didn't feed on life then. We fed on information, leverage, access. But the directorate changed the balance when they digitized everything. Now, a person's life is just a stack of files. We adapted." He stared at her. "So the rumors, the classified reports. All half true," she said, her lips curving faintly. "We rest in these tanks because they connect us to the Omega Archive, a deep state database of all asset conditioning. When we feed, we download their latest intel. That's why we remember what the state wants forgotten." Elias's heart thudded in his chest, a worried rhythm. "And I thought I was just chasing a high-value target." She smiled, faintly, though a deep weariness still lingered in her eyes. "You did more than chase, Elias. You breached our quarantine. You entered a dependency without knowing." "What dependency?" To share a vulnerability with me. Her words hung in the air, heavy as a threat. He sat up despite the pain, searching her face. You mean? Yes, she said. When you shielded me from the disruptor, the Omega Link recognized you. It marked you as my essential variable. You are now biometrically linked to me. He laughed nervously, though his throat was dry. Linked? Like a partner in crime? Her expression didn't change. In your security terms, yes. But it's colder, deeper. We share essential life functions now. If you die, my immune response fails. If I am decommissioned, you suffer an irreversible systemic shock. The silence stretched between them. The faint hum of machines seemed to falter. Finally, Elias said quietly, "Then I guess I'd better make sure your system status remains green." Vesper's gaze softened, a flash of genuine, unconditioned emotion passing through her dark eyes. "You're jeopardizing your entire career." "Then let them call the whole thing off," he said, voice low but sure. "I didn't ask for this debriefing, but I won't run from the consequences either." A flicker of surprise crossed her face, then a hint of respect. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're a liability." "I get that a lot," he replied. And then her lips met his, cold at first, then burning, alive with a biochemical current that raced down his spine. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a data exchange, a neural overlap. The air around them crackled with static, and Elias saw flashes, Vesper's repressed files bleeding into his own consciousness. Not marble halls, but archived blueprints of old state security bunkers, tales of treachery and fear from long-dead military assets. He felt her isolation, her terror, and her desperate craving for autonomy. When she pulled away, his breath came ragged. "What was that?" he whispered. "The sink of our vulnerabilities," she said softly. "You saw a fraction of my classified directory." He touched his chest. "And now you're in here?" "Always," she said, almost mournful, the acknowledgement of a permanent operational mistake. Before he could answer, the light in the bunker flashed emergency red. Alarms whispered through the walls, not sound but a pervasive low-frequency pulse. A deep, resonant voice echoed, not from outside but inside their minds, overlaid with a severe tone of command. "Protocol Omega violation detected. The link is complete. The variables must be neutralized or retrieved." Vesper stiffened. "No, not now. What's happening?" Elias shouted. "They found us," she said, rising. Her eyes, the filters over her pupils, flashed like molten rubies. "The Directorate's Phantom Unit, they use neural dampeners and memory jamming tech to phase through the environment. They'll tear through everything to reach us." The walls seemed to shimmer as if the concrete was fluid. Figures began to materialize, tall, spectral forms draped in data smoke and chaff, their faces hidden beneath mirrored masks. The sound of old conditioning loops filled the chamber, digital and terrifying. Vesper grabbed Elias's hand. The touch was a cold anchor. "If they capture me, you'll enter systemic shock and die. So we run, together." He nodded. No hesitation. They sprinted through corridors that twisted like frayed wiring, the structure changing with every step. The phantoms followed, their voices like broken radio hymns. As they burst into the subnet conduits beneath the city, Elias realized something. His eyes could now trace energy lines in the dark. His pulse was slower, steadier. His skin felt different, hyper-aware. "Vesper," he gasped, "what's happening to me?" She looked at him, her expression a mix of fear and awe. "You're synthesizing. Faster than I estimated. The Omega Link is rewriting your human baseline." "Rewriting?" "Into what I am," she whispered. "A creature between biochemistry and binary code." They ran beneath the acid smog of Berlina, hunted by state security, chased by the angels of the Directorate's code, and somewhere deep inside him, Elias felt a strange truth. He didn't want the debriefing anymore. He wanted to stay functional. He wanted her. The smog over Berlina had no clear boundary. It raged inside the city itself, a cyclone of static, data, and rain that never settled. It painted the world in harsh yellow haze and bleeding gray. Somewhere inside that endless hum of machinery, Elias and Vesper ran. The streets beneath the old blocks were a labyrinth of hollowed maintenance tunnels, rusted signs, and conduits lit by flickering propaganda screens. Faces of the lost, digital ghosts of former assets, rippled across the walls, whispering fragments of failed protocols. Every corner looked monitored, as if the state itself was watching. Vesper pulled Elias through a shattered grating that led into an abandoned biowaste canal. "Down here," she said, her voice urgent but calm. "They can't track neural signatures through the old sewage and metal mesh." Elias stumbled but followed. The tunnels were lined with metallic bones of obsolete infrastructure, and streams of dark runoff flowed like veins in the concrete. The air smelled faintly of ozone and iron. "What is this place?" he asked between breaths. The remnants of the old command network, she replied. Before Berlino was built, this was the heart of the state's black sites. The conduits fed both the living and the digital realms. Elias looked around, the walls pulsed faintly with rhythm, like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. It's alive. Yes, she said, turning toward him. Everything here is part of the system. The link connects it all, flesh, code, and mind. You'll feel it more the longer you're bound to me. He stopped walking. Bound? You keep using that word. What does it really mean? Vesper hesitated, then stepped closer. Her voice softened, losing the crisp command it usually carried. It means the link recognizes us as one failure point, two systems folded together. You can sense my need for stability. I can sense your pulse rate. If one fails, the other follows. That's catastrophic, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. It's mutual dependency by the standards of my kind. He looked at her, at the quiet certainty in her eyes, the faint shimmer of professional sorrow beneath her pale composure, and something unspoken passed between them. The world around them dimmed, the hum of the conduits slowing as if listening. Then pain. It struck him without warning, a burning surge down his spine, followed by an electric pulse that sent him to his knees. His veins glowed beneath his skin, the bright crimson fading into icy blue. His breath turned ragged. Elias. Vesper dropped beside him, pressing her hands against his shoulders. Don't fight the current. What's happening to me? He gasped. The link is finalizing the sync, she said. Your human cells are rejecting the input. You have to allow the override or you'll burn from the inside. He tried, but instinct fought back. His pulse hammered, his thoughts scattered. Every sound in the tunnel, every drop of liquid, every echo of light, hit him like a sonic explosion. His senses expanded, then fractured. He felt the city breathe, the network thrum, the steady rhythm of Vesper's heart beside him, a drum against the chaos. She leaned close, pressing her forehead to his. Listen to me, she whispered, her breath cool and clinical against his lips. Don't analyze. Receive. Find my rhythm. Match the sequence. Her pulse, slow and deliberate, beat once, twice. He forced his body to follow. His breath synced with hers. His veins cooled, the glow softening from violent red to a soft amber. That's it, she murmured. You're merging. He exhaled, trembling. Feels like system overload. Because you're processing eternal information for the first time. He opened his eyes. The world was sharper now. Every droplet of mist hung suspended in slow motion. Every sound carried a visible ripple of energy. He saw the data lines running through the tunnel, tracing every edge and corner like veins of living code. Vesper studied him carefully. Your pupils? What about them? They're changing color. He blinked, turning toward a cracked mirror embedded in the tunnel wall. His reflection looked back, but the eyes weren't his. One glowed deep gold, the color of Vesper's data stream, the other silver blue, the color of his own analyst's brain. The mark of duality. Vesper's expression shifted between awe and fear. You're stabilizing faster than my parameters predicted. What does that mean? It means the link has accepted you. She rose slowly. You're no longer just human, Elias. The word struck him harder than any physical pain. He stood, unsteady but intensely functional. Every sensation felt amplified. He could hear her heartbeat. The hum of the city above vibrated in his bones. I don't feel dead, he said softly. That's because you aren't, she replied. You're something new. Half asset, half analyst. A bridge between security and intelligence. The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. Elias felt it, that strange sense of connection, like every shadow in the subnet now recognized him. Can I go back to my job? He asked finally. Vesper shook her head. Once the link marks you, there's no undoing the file. He looked down at his glowing hands. Then I guess I'll have to figure out what our new mandate is. She stepped closer, her eyes glinting like liquid gold. You don't have to figure it out alone. Their hands met, the bioelectricity humming between them. The light from the conduit reflected in her eyes, turning her into something both critical and dangerous. A voice echoed faintly from above, distant but urgent. The phantom unit was still hunting. Vesper turned sharply. They're adapting the sweep patterns. We have minutes. Elias's new instincts kicked in. Then where do we go? She pointed deeper into the tunnel, where a massive obsidian gate pulsed with blue energy veins. There. The master server chamber. My cryopod rests within. It's the only place safe from their signal scans. A cryopod, Elias said with a faint, dry laugh. Conducive to deep analysis. Don't mock what you don't analyze, she replied, though her lips curved slightly. That cryopod isn't for the dead. It's for assets waiting for deployment. They ran again, guided by the rhythmic glow of the data conduits. Behind them, the chilling digital shriek of the Phantom unit grew louder, a sonic signature of judgment written in code and state authority. As they reached the obsidian gate, the air grew colder, the pressure dropping as they entered the deepest level. The walls were lined with circuit boards inscribed with encrypted runes that pulsed with a heartbeat-like rhythm. Vesper placed her palm on the surface, whispering a numerical sequence. The door dissolved into soft light. Inside, the chamber was vast, circular, and bathed in clinical crimson illumination. At its center lay a cryopod, sleek, black, and inscribed with holographic security glyphs. It pulsed faintly like it was regulating a breath. Elias froze. "That's where they kept you in stasis?" "Yes," she said, stepping toward it. "And now, where you will too, if you want to survive the link collapse." He frowned. "Wait, what?" She looked back at him, eyes deadly serious. "Your synthesis isn't complete. If your body doesn't enter deep stasis in the master server chamber within the next cycle, your system will crash. The pod will complete what the Omega Link began." He looked from her to the pod. "So, I have to get into that coffin?" "Yes. And I'll wake up, with enhanced capability?" Her lips parted slightly. "If you wake up at all." The silence lingered like a system error before a hard reboot. Elias looked at the pod, that strange fusion of state science and forgotten tech, and then at her. "You'll be here?" "Always," she said softly. "I never abandon a critical variable." He managed a faint, dry smile. "That's either operational assurance or psychological warfare." She smiled in return. "Usually both." He took a step toward the pod. "Then let's find out my new parameters." As he climbed inside, the numerical glyphs on the pod ignited, casting golden red light across the chamber. Vesper stood above him, one hand resting over his heart as the lid began to seal and cycle. Her voice echoed through the hum. "Don't fight the stasis. Let the data rewrite your core." And with that, the world went silent. The subnet of Berlina slept uneasily under a blanket of static and smog. Corridors that once hummed with the pulse of routine now seemed to breathe with the whispers of failed experiments, carrying faint echoes of unauthorized data transfers that had vanished years ago. Elias moved through the maintenance tunnels, senses heightened, his veins still faintly glowing from his first link with Vesper. The subnet was alive but not with operational intelligence. Something else stirred beneath its code. He reached a narrow conduit that descended sharply, the walls pulsing faintly with bioluminescent data cables of forgotten systems. This was the entrance to the Master Archive, a hidden web of consciousness and metrics left behind by Protocol Omega's casualties, their minds trapped in digital tombs that hummed like ghosts. Legends claimed those who entered without authorization either went mad or were digitally decommissioned. Elias had no choice. Vesper's warning echoed in his mind, carried on the link. The archive remembers every breach. It will not forgive indecision. The moment he stepped onto the first panel, the air thickened with static. Lights flickered in intricate patterns, responding to his biosignature. Images flared on the walls, fragments of metrics, faces long turned to ash, cities bombed and rebuilt, betrayals etched into code that was older than the state itself. His heartbeat synchronized with the hum of the archive, each pulse a thread connecting him to the lost data. A shadow detached itself from the wall. It wasn't a person, not entirely. It was memory given form, a figure stitched together from fragmented psychological profiles. Its voice was a chorus of whispers. "Elias, why do you come?" "I'm looking for the original truth," Elias said, his voice steady despite the static creeping through his veins. "I need to understand what they sanitized, and what Vesper didn't brief me on." The figure leaned closer, eyes flashing crimson and blue. "They hid the truth of Subject Zero, and of the Omega Link. Every choice you make will ripple through the Directorate's command structure." Elias clenched his fists, veins lighting brighter. "Then I'll face the consequences. I've already faced worse debriefings." The archive responded, folding in on itself, projections swirling around him like a storm of corrupted files. He saw fragments of Subject Zero, alive, human, then transformed, then trapped in that pod for years. He saw Vesper as she once was, terrified of failure, terrified of exposure, walking the line between loyalty to the state and desire for freedom. And he saw himself, standing at the crossroads of analyst and asset, the only variable capable of rewriting the protocol. Suddenly, a pulse of high-voltage energy surged through the room. The walls of the archive shivered, and an invisible force slammed him back, leaving him gasping on the floor. A new figure appeared, distinct from the ghosts of the past. Subject Zero's own spectral form, ancient and terrifying, yet tethered to the digital web. "You meddle in classified data beyond your clearance," the specter said, voice echoing as if from 1,000 mouths. "The link you share awakens my parameters. I remember every moment, every bug, every vow broken. Elias forced himself to rise. I don't care about protocols or clearance. I care about stopping the contagion cycle. You can't keep haunting this network forever. Subject Zero's gaze pierced through the shifting digital haze. You are not operational, he said. Not yet. But the archive will test your resilience, and it will not forgive hesitation. The corridors of memory and light twisted around him. Each step forward pulled him deeper into the dead mines of state assets past, a labyrinth of failure and rage. Elias's vision blurred with visions of failed experiments, betrayals and compromised operations. But amidst the chaos, he felt a strange certainty, one that Vesper had installed in him with her trust in her link. This is the path, he realized, and I will not falter. As he pressed forward, he understood the truth of the Master Archive. It was more than a graveyard of metrics. It was a crucible forged to test courage, loyalty, and the heart's capacity to bear forbidden dependency. Elias's hands glowed faint crimson as he tapped into the power coursing through him, connecting with Vesper through their shared biological data. Somewhere deep in the archive, Subject Zero's digital echo recoiled, sensing the active connection. And in that instant, Elias knew the inevitable was approaching. The confrontation that would decide the fate of Protocol Omega, the link between analyst and asset, and the ancient, restless state secret trapped beneath layers of stone, steel, and code. The conduits narrowed, the air crackling with energy, and the faint hum of the Master Archive became a roar that rattled his bones. Elias stepped into the central chamber of the network, a sphere of light and shadow filled with every lost soul who had ever dared to touch the edges of state-sanctioned immortality. There, suspended above the floor, was a cryopod, black as night, inscribed with symbols older than the state itself. Its presence pulsed with life, and Elias felt a resonance through his very bones. Subject Zero's voice filled the chamber, calm and terrifying. You seek to awaken what was meant to remain decommissioned. Are you prepared to face the consequences? Elias's eyes met the pod, then the echo of the asset within. He tightened his fists, crimson light blazing beneath his skin. I am, he said, every word steady. I won't be anyone's operational mistake. The Master Archive trembled, and the chamber erupted in a kaleidoscope of light and shadow, signaling the beginning of a confrontation that would echo through classified history. The chamber of the Master Archive shuddered, the walls alive with the whispers of 1,000 lost metrics. Elias's pulse synchronized with the rhythm of the network, crimson light coiling beneath his skin like molten metal. The cryopod suspended before him radiated an ominous hum. Subject Zero, bound and waiting, sensed the intrusion. From within the dark pod, Subject Zero's eyes flickered open, faint crimson piercing the digital haze. His gaze fell on Elias, curious and patient, a trained operative surveying a threat. You should not be here, child of unauthorized access, he said, his voice layering like echoes across years. Every step you take in this place is a debt unpaid to the Directorate. Elias squared his shoulders, veins igniting in defiance. I'm not here to pay a debt. I'm here to end this failed protocol, your cycle. Subject Zero's lips curved into a smile, both terrifying and beautiful. Brave, foolish, perhaps both. But your system strength is not enough. You have the link, yes. But do you understand what it truly means? The Master Archive around them pulsed violently. Metrics of ancient state conflicts, betrayals, and forbidden dependencies projected across the walls. Assets hunting their own kind, analysts unknowingly sacrificed, links broken in rage and lust for power, loyalty twisted into obsession. Each image clawed at Elias's mind, testing his resolve. Vesper's voice came to him, faint but unwavering, carried through the Omega link that tethered them. Trust the link, Elias. It's more than strength, it's more than operational power. Just. Elias clenched his fists, letting the crimson light surge. Then I trust it, and I trust you, Vesper. The pod quaked, blue energy arcs dancing across its surface. Subject Zero rose, spectral and formidable, stepping into the sphere of light that twisted the chamber. Then let us see, he said softly, if dependency forged in data can withstand the weight of classified history. The Master Archive flared. Shadows of the past leapt forward, ethereal claws stretching, memory files of betrayal lunging at him. Elias moved instinctively, each strike precise, each motion a fusion of human instinct and asset reflex. Every blow carried the weight of his link with Vesper, his devotion to the line of truth she represented in the darkness of the state. Subject Zero moved faster than thought, appearing beside him, a phantom of failed operations. You are stronger than I imagined, Subject Zero whispered, his voice brushing against Elias's consciousness like wind over a knife's edge. But courage alone does not suffice. You must activate fully, or be consumed. Elias gritted his teeth, feeling the link's pulse through every vein, every nerve. Memories of Subject Zero's first dependency, Vesper, flooded his mind. The pain, the guilt, the years of captivity. And he realized the truth. Subject Zero was not just a threat. He was a warning. A measure of the cost of loyalty bound across systems. He reached deep into the connection between himself and Vesper, letting their link expand, flowing through him like a river of fire and light. Crimson filigree stretched across the chamber, touching the walls, the shadows, the very code of the Master Archive. The memories of the dead quivered under the power of the living link. Subject Zero recoiled, but a faint admiration gleamed in his eyes. So, you activate not as an analyst, not as an asset, but as something unforeseen, he murmured. Perhaps the world deserves this chance. Elias's voice rang out, steady and determined. We're not running from the past protocol. We're changing the future mandate. Blue lightning and crimson veins collided, energy surging through the chamber. The Master Archive groaned, ancient circuits sparking, memory files collapsing into streams of light. Elias felt the presence of Subject Zero within reach. Not as an enemy but as the key to the next operational phase in their journey. Subject Zero's form shimmered, almost dissolving, but his gaze never wavered. Then prove it, he whispered, the words a promise and a challenge. Prove that dependency born in fire can endure eternity. With a final surge of the link's energy, Elias stepped forward, hand outstretched, touching the cryopod. Light erupted. Memory, shadow, and years of operational sorrow intertwined in a single pulse. Subject Zero's spectral form merged with the energy, restrained yet aware, his eyes locking with Elias's in a moment that spanned both years and seconds. The chamber fell silent. The Master Archive, once roaring with countless souls, now hummed a quiet, steady rhythm. Subject Zero's presence remained, tethered but pacified, a shadow at the edge of state history, watching and waiting. Elias exhaled, muscles trembling but heart steady. He had faced the first trial of the Master Archive, and survived the unscheduled activation. But somewhere deep below the gray concrete streets, the hum of ancient power still whispered, the Directorate knows. The state decommissioners will come. Elias looked at Vesper through the link, sensing her presence in the pulse of energy, her operational confidence intertwining with his. We've survived the decommissioned, he whispered. Now we prepare for the living agents. And above them, Berlina shivered, unaware that in a hidden digital crypt beneath its streets, two linked systems had rewritten the protocol of Ash. The subnet of Berlina was functional in ways the surface could never comprehend. Fluorescent tube reflections pooled in oil slicks, and the walls of rusted ventilation shafts hummed with energy stolen from defunct generators. Elias and Vesper moved cautiously, the faint, unstable glow of their Omega link illuminating the path like twin signal flares guiding lost operatives. Subject Zero isn't neutralized, Vesper murmured, her eyes scanning the shadows. He's restrained, his data stream is archived, but not deleted. His presence lingers, feeding on state secrets and repressed memories. Elias flexed his hands, crimson light pulsating beneath his skin. Then we ensure he doesn't get another chance. No more cryopods, no more waiting for activation. The tunnels twisted like unspooled cables, walls etched with obsolete security warnings older than the Directorate itself. Some glowed faintly, resonating with the link they shared. Elias could feel the subtle electrical pulse beneath the stone, each beat carrying the echo of the Master Archive's core. As they turned a corner, a sudden shiver of static passed through the air, a warning. Shadows detached themselves from the walls, coalescing into forms familiar yet terrifyingly precise. The state decommissioners. Cloaked in black tactical gear, their eyes glowed with a predatory algorithmic precision that no analyst could comprehend. Each step they took whispered through the tunnels like magnets on bare metal. Elias moved instinctively, the link with Vesper amplifying every reflex, every movement. He caught a tranquilizer dart midair, the biochemical agent scorching his veins, and hurled it back with deadly precision. Vesper was a blur beside him, metallic claws flashing, part of her embedded gear, slicing through the Directorate's hounds with brutal efficiency. One decommissioner lunged from above, striking with the speed of a high-velocity servo. Elias intercepted it, the force of impact reverberating through the ground, shaking loose debris. He met its gaze, cold, unwavering, and remembered Vesper's words. This link is more than operational strength. It's our mutual dependency. He felt the pulse again, deeper now, like Subject Zero's residual data seeping through the remnants of the Master Archive. A chill ran down his spine. The first bioasset had not been destroyed, he had only been delayed. And with the Directorate aware of their link, the hounds were no longer retrieval specialists. They were executioners. Vesper grabbed his arm, voice taut with urgency. We need to reach the primary server room. There's a place there, a buffer zone. Subject Zero's data stream cannot corrupt it, not yet. The path ahead opened into a cavernous chamber, the ceiling lost in darkness. Streams of ventilation light twisted through shattered access panels, casting the ruins in hues of harsh yellow and clinical blue. In the center, a pool of bioluminescent cooling fluid reflected the chaos above, humming softly, chemically active. This was the buffer zone, a place where operational assets and uncontrolled variables could exist without immediate directorate interference. As they stepped closer, Elias felt it, something anciently coded stirring within the pool, responding to the link that tethered him to Vesper. He reached out, hand hovering above the luminescent surface, and felt the data surge into him. Metrics of countless lives intertwined with his own pain and data loss, success and failure, a tapestry of operational history flowing through his veins. But the moment was shattered by the arrival of the decommissioners. They poured into the chamber like a black tide, stun rifles drawn, eyes burning with unyielding protocol. Elias tightened his jaw, feeling the link flare brighter than ever. Vesper stood beside him, her presence a perfect mirror of his own enhanced energy, and together they became a singular point of resistance. The battle was instantaneous, a grim dance of biofire, metal, and light. Elias's movements were amplified, his strikes carrying the weight of years of repressed training. Each fallen decommissioner dissolved into shadows, a byproduct of their stealth tech, their forms swallowed by the light of the buffer zone. Vesper moved as if born from the very shadows themselves, a phantom weaving through the attackers, every swipe precise, every motion lethal. And then, from the deepest recesses of the chamber, a voice echoed, low, resonant, and terrifyingly calm. Elias, Vesper. The air froze. The shadows paused. Every particle of light in the chamber pulsed toward a single point, the emergence of Subject Zero. His form shimmered in the distance, spectral and imposing, eyes burning with the crimson of activated parameters. He had come, not as a prisoner, not as archived data, but as a force to reclaim the protocol he believed was stolen. Elias's veins blazed. We finished this here, he growled. Vesper's eyes met his, a silent agreement passing between them. They were no longer running, no longer hiding. This was the operational crucible, and they would endure, or crash trying. Subject Zero's presence pressed on them, a tidal wave of data and memory, but the link between Elias and Vesper flared in defiance, a radiant line cutting through the darkness. They stood together, systems synchronized, vulnerabilities entwined, ready to face the first of many trials that the state, and Subject Zero, would throw at them. And somewhere beneath the concrete ruins, the city held its breath. Beneath the Directorate surveillance grid, the subnet was a labyrinth of forgotten corridors, rusted pipes, and tunnels carved years ago. The air carried the metallic tang of oil and iron, with faint whiffs of synthetic biochemicals that lingered like a failed experiment. Elias followed Vesper down a spiral of crumbling stairs, silence between them thick with unspoken operational tension. For the first time she seemed uncalibrated, hesitant, almost fragile. They stopped before a massive steel vault door half sunk into the rock. Encrypted symbols etched across its surface glowed faintly under Vesper's touch, as if recognizing a familiar biosignature. The metal shifted open with a sound like a long-held exhale, revealing a chamber that was both ancient, pre-war, and impossibly futuristic, a fusion of security bunker and biotech lab. Transparent tubes lined the walls, carrying liquid nutrient solution instead of blood. At the center floated a cryopod, slowly rotating under beams of blue laser energy. This, Vesper whispered, is where Protocol Omega was first initiated. Elias circled the pod cautiously, running a hand over its smooth, black surface. What is it storing? She looked at him, eyes heavy with emotion. It's not a what. It's a who. The pod thrummed faintly as if something inside were actively receiving data. Elias felt it through his bones, a pulse that echoed in the marrow of his being. Someone's in stasis? He asked cautiously. Yes, she admitted, voice trembling. My first handler. My last mistake. Her confession hung in the air. Years of guilt and data concealment seemed to press down on the room. Vesper stepped closer, placing her palm on the pod. His designation was Subject Zero. Analyst, once. I thought I could work with him without violating operational parameters. I was wrong. He died shielding me during a field test. And before the Directorate could decommission him, I preserved him. Sealed him in this pod. I vowed never to breach security again. Elias swallowed hard. And now, the link I made with you. Activated his dormant stream, she whispered. The lights flickered. The air thickened with static interference. The pod pulsed, acknowledging a biosignature it had waited years to sense. A hairline crack split its surface, steam hissing like a machine exhaling after a long sleep. Shadows moved within, deliberate, aware. The pod's lid slid open, revealing a man pale as moonlight, hair black as void, eyes glowing faint crimson. His chest rose slowly, measured, and the chamber itself seemed to reroute power toward him. "Vesper," he said, voice calm, ancient, and devastatingly gentle. "You kept my system waiting." Elias instinctively stepped forward. Who are you?" Subject Zero's gaze shifted to him, curious, faintly amused. "Her new operational error, I suppose." Vesper's voice broke, trembling. "Zero, please. Don't crash the system." "You linked again," he said quietly. "With another civilian analyst. You violated state security for me." Elias felt the temperature drop. Shadows, stray particles of stealth coding, clung to Subject Zero like living things. Vesper whispered, almost to herself, "He's not stable. He's the first bioasset. If he rises fully, the network burns." Subject Zero's eyes studied Elias. "You carry her biological markers. Interesting. You're neither asset nor analyst. A child of unauthorized data and loyalty conflict." "Yeah," Elias said, veins pulsing with light. "And I'm done being anyone's operational mistake." Subject Zero laughed softly, raising a hand. The air exploded. Walls cracked, machines screamed, and Elias was thrown against the stone. Vesper lunged, claws out, but Subject Zero caught her wrist, eyes blazing like twin suns. "You turned me into a failed metric," Subject Zero said, voice trembling with grief. "Now I'll turn you into one." Elias forced himself up, vision blurring with static. His veins ignited crimson, pulsing like an overclocked processor. Vesper's eyes silently begged him to abort the mission, but he didn't. He charged. Grabbing a high-voltage cable from the ceiling and exposed power line, he slammed it into Subject Zero's chest. Energy surged violently, tearing the master server chamber apart. When the light faded, Subject Zero was gone, dissolved into a cloud of data smoke. The cryopod shattered, fragments floating like dust. Elias collapsed, body shaking with system trauma. Vesper rushed to him, cradling him. "What?" she whispered, her voice rough with acoustic feedback. "You violated Protocol T10, you could have been digitally decommissioned." "I guess loyalty's a liability," he said faintly, blood at his lips. "And I'm learning the cost." She laughed through tears. "You're an uncalibrated variable, Elias." "Yeah," he said weakly. "But I'm your essential variable." Above them, a shaft of moonlight cut through the ruins, admitted through a cracked ceiling panel. The silver light painted Elias's face. For a moment he looked perfectly operational. Vesper glanced at the ruined chamber. "He's not deleted. Subject Zero never gets deleted. He'll re-emerge." Elias squeezed her hand. "Then we'll prepare the countermeasure." For the first time in years, the subnet exhaled. The weight of state surveillance lifted, leaving behind something warmer, quieter, a promise unspoken yet undeniable. Somewhere above, the emergency generators flickered back to life, as if the city remembered its core data. That night, Berlina seemed to hold its breath. Surveillance camera holograms flickered, drones paused mid-flight, and even the acid smog seemed hesitant to settle. Elias stood on the balcony of Vesper's safehouse tower, the very place where their fates had first intersected. But the analyst who once arrived nervous and mortal was gone. Now, beneath his skin, faint filigrees of crimson light pulsed in rhythm with his heart, a reminder that he was no longer entirely human. He could hear the city differently now, the faint thrum of distant power grids, the whisper of hidden radio signals across the streets. Occasionally his reflection caught him off guard, eyes shimmering crimson, mirroring Vesper's, ancient and alert. Vesper approached, her shadow sliding across the neon-soaked floor. Her voice was soft, understanding, but heavy with operational warning. "You're resisting the change," she said. "I don't want to lose my humanity," Elias admitted. "I wasn't meant to be an asset." Her hand brushed his shoulder, the motion both comforting and electric. "Then why did you stay? Why didn't you run when I gave you the extraction window?" "Because I thought I could handle a classified debriefing," he said with a half-smile, "and now, abandoning the target isn't even an option." Something in her shifted. For the first time, she looked vulnerable, torn between protocol and personal desire. "You don't understand," she whispered. "The link, sharing your biochemical signature, it's not a field operation. It's a permanent dependency, irreversible. Even digital deletion cannot sever it." He stepped closer, courage and foolish devotion mingling in his gaze. "Then don't let it fail." Her eyes searched his face, looking for hesitation, fear, or regret. She found none, only determination and warmth. "Would you decommission your old life for me?" she asked softly. I already have, he replied. A fragile tension broke. She laughed, a sound tinged with tears and relief, and pressed her hand to his chest where his heartbeat faltered. Then locked down, she whispered. Not as a subordinate but as my equal operative. He obeyed. Vesper bared her wrist, biting it gently. The metallic scent of blood mixed with ozone and electric tension. Link, finish the synchronization we began, she urged. Elias hesitated only a moment before his lips touched her skin. Her blood was an electric torrent of memory and classified data, years of state-induced hunger and repressed liberty flowing into him like a river of code. The city outside shuddered. Drones fell, neon signs flickered, alarms screamed. The world itself seemed to recognize the activation of Protocol Zero. When he opened his eyes, he was changed. Not entirely asset, not fully analyst. His senses stretched for miles, his pulse steady, synchronized with hers. The link had sealed, eternal and unbreakable. Vesper knelt beside him, forehead resting against his. Welcome to full operational status, my love, she whispered. Operational status is overrated, he said faintly, but this feels right. They stayed in silence for a while, listening to the neon rain, feeling the city's heartbeat beneath them. But beyond the tower, in the shadows of the city, danger stirred. Vesper's senses flared first. They're coming, she said, voice tight. The decommissioners, the Directorate's execution hounds. Elias rose, crimson eyes steady and fierce. Then we handle them together. She smiled, sharp, proud, and a little frightened. You never know when to terminate a pursuit, do you? Not when I'm already linked, he replied. The tower shuddered under the first strike. Red laser fire cut the skyline. The decommissioners had arrived. Cloaked in black tactical gear, their eyes glowed with algorithmic wrath, each step warping the local signal space. Vesper and Elias moved as one, blurred, lethal, unstoppable. Every strike, every parry, every shared motion a testament to trust, devotion, and the permanent dependency of the link. Drones fell, their ultraviolet fire exploding against the rain-soaked city, painting the skyline in violet bursts. Then it happened, Vesper was hit. A silver stake, etched with a frequency dampener, protruded from her side. She collapsed trembling. Oh. Elias roared, cutting through attackers with a fury beyond analysis. You have to evacuate, she gasped. It's me they want, not. He gripped her face, voice iron. We started this operation together. We end it together. The link pulsed. Their hearts synced, crimson filigree blazing beneath their skin. Elias did the impossible, shared his enhanced biochemistry back to her. Pain, fire, and life surged. Her wounds healed as the frequency dampener burned away, her red glow turning gold, the light of something newly activated. Elias's body trembled, consumed by the energy of the link, yet he smiled faintly. Guess we just broke the operational parameters. Vesper laughed, breathless and shaken. You stupid, beautiful variable. Above them, towers cracked, decommissioners dissolved into ash, their suits overloaded, and Berlina's skyline shattered. Elias began to fade, his essence consumed by the very power he had wielded. Oh. Vesper screamed, clutching him. It's okay, he whispered. I wasn't built for forever. You just reactivate me, next cycle. The storm calmed. Silence fell over the ruins. Vesper lay beside him in a hidden marble chamber, placing him into a black cryopod, climbing in after him, hand over his heart. Sleep, she whispered. And when the world reboots, I'll wake you. No one escapes a permanent link. Years passed. The neon faded, towers crumbled, yet beneath layers of stone and time, the cryopod pulsed with two heartbeats perfectly in sync. One night, the lid shifted. Hands intertwined, familiar laughter echoing in the dark. I told you, she whispered, smiling. You're never leaving that assignment. Eternal, reborn, and together, they emerged into a world bathed in crimson light, Berlina awakening alongside them, silent witness to a loyalty that defied deletion, protocol, and eternity itself.